So welcome everybody. I hope this finds everybody well and managing through this. It's great to have everybody online. We were just chatting quickly about kind of some Zoom and some Zoom etiquette and things to get comfortable with. And so we were encouraging video so we can get to know a few more familiar faces. If I'm new to anyone and I haven't met you yet, I'm Lisa Kaliza. I'm the educational lead developer with PG and the co-lead of CBME with Dr. Preparedness. So today we thought we would do something new and get a large group, open it wide up to anybody and everybody working in CBME or about to transition to CBD and have questions. We have lots of updates. There is a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and you've received some recent emails, and of course there's current interest in updates around the launch to 2020. So Praveen will start us off with those updates. We'll talk a little bit more about the impact of COVID-19 and where things are at and how we can help. We have David Callan, Dr. David Callan on the phone, who is our chair of our Learner Development Committee. Dr. Rainey Basilius, who's our chair of faculty development, to provide an update. We have Chantel Campbell, who is our MedSIS technologist and analyst, and she is on the phone to talk about the recent MedSIS enhancements, upcoming training for those launching, and then we want to leave room for discussion. We were talking too about the best way to do that. I don't want to steal any more of our hour, but if there are questions that come up as the presenters are speaking, please use the chat function and upload those questions, and the speakers will try to work them in to their presentation, and then anything that's left we can open up for discussion and questions and answers at the end. So with that, Parveen, if you want to take us on to update.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate that. So we had basically, in terms of process, there was 13 programs slated to go forward July 1. We've spent, I think Chantel and Lisa have spent a lot of time with the program directors, getting them oriented in terms of MedSIS and the Competence Committee dashboard, et cetera. So what's happened is that the program directors of each of these disciplines across the country were surveyed as to their readiness. Lots of factors in terms of readiness, and really to anticipate what the changes have been due to COVID-19. So after that, all of the surveys were collated. The Royal College had extensive discussions with the specialty committee chairs, who had extensive discussion with specialty committee members about whether the program goes forward or not. So the three big areas that I think had challenges for transition to CBD were, number one, were FacDev. So majority of the programs, even the ones who were ready to move forward, did identify issues with faculty development. And I think it's probably related to the fact, because we're basically only 3 months, right? April, May, June, probably related to on the ground faculty development in terms of getting the faculty looking at the EPAs and thinking about where they're gonna implement the EPAs within clinical training. Because a lot of other stuff that is more generic, CBME, CBD training had happened. For many programs. So I think that was probably the rate limiting step for FacDev. Number two was faculty. Some faculty are more involved in the COVID response than others. So they really did, the faculty were very, very stressed, and this was yet another stress that would be added on. And then the third reason that programs identified for deferral was just the disruption in training. And this was really an effect for some of the surgical programs, but also some of the non-surgical programs as well, in terms of moving to virtual clinics and the ability to do EPAs in this current clinical environment. One could say, however, for the third category is that regardless of how one chooses to move forward, whether it's a CBD system or whether it's a time-based system, the disruptions of clinical training is going to be the same. I can't see how, it would change by not transforming. And one could also say, if one is that perhaps the CBD would have been useful in a transition, in a disrupted training environment, in terms of really knowing what residents were doing or not doing, rather than trying to tie it up all to time. You know, they can get this rotation, they can get that rotation. It might actually have been easier to transition into CBD in this environment. But anyway, regardless, 13 programs, 4 were deferred. Pediatric surgery, and these are all within our McMaster. So I'm just going to mention the McMaster. The only program that we didn't have out of those 13 was nuclear medicine. Pediatric surgery, respirology, adult cardio, and pediatric cardio is moving forward, but adult cardiology is not, and neonatal perinatal. The go-aheads are orthopedics, psychiatry, plastic surgery, PMR, and neurology. And then there's 3 that are pending decisions, and they're pending because they still have to go back and talk to their specialty committee members. And that's general surgery, clinical allergy, immunology, and vascular surgery. So we're hoping to hear about them in the next day or so, probably through email. The 2 things that the college has suggested is those programs that are deferred proceed with a soft launch. And many programs already did that prior to this, is to try and implement EPAs in a soft launch, and it's be easier because they're uploaded, and have programs continue to do the soft launch, do CBD as best as they can prior to being implemented in 2021. But any resident who enters in 2020 will still be credentialed according to our time-based system. So that program would still have to follow, that resident would still have to follow the specialty training requirements. But the hope is that both could occur with some CBD activity as well to prepare the programs for 2021. The other one that is new, soft launch was always possible, so that's not a new phenomenon, but permissive launch. So the permissive launch is really to recognize that everything is topsy-turvy right now, and that programs may not be able to do the same thing as they would maybe a year ago, or hopefully a year going forward. So permissive launch is stuff like, you know, your decreased numbers of observations per EPA. As well, there may be some changes in terms of the trend, in terms of the progression of the EPA. So some EPAs may be able to be done sooner, some EPAs will be able to be done later, and then really looking at the program individually to say, you know, I can do this now, but I'm going to have to defer this and change the training report, change the EPAs according to what you're able to deliver. The third thing was competence committees. You know, I'm not really sure about this third thing because competence committees are actually an accreditation standard. So I think majority of programs should actually have them if they're going to meet accreditation requirements, regardless of whether they transition to CBD or non-CBD. So, you know, the college just said you don't have to have it ready, but I'm just going to say you do have to have it ready because it is an accreditation standard. So the actual language of the standard says competence committee or equivalent. So if people have an assessment committee where they review assessments, that is from an accreditation perspective, that's fine. The other thing with the permissive launch is those people that are going through an accreditation activity. So some of our programs are going to an external review in the next few months, is that the college will actually, none of them that are actually launching, but some that are actually in CBD already would be permissive in that accreditation would take into account the disruption due to COVID and be lenient. So if you don't have all of the EPAs, if the observations are decreased, the competence committee is only met once, or you haven't been able to make decisions on promotion because of the training environment, then that will be taken into account in any accreditation decision. So that's really all I have from the Royal College. I think they have been, just a plug for the Royal College, have been very receptive to the concerns raised by program directors and by specialty committees about what impact COVID has had. They've also released a document which I will circulate to all of the PDs who can circulate to the CBD directors as well, is about what kind of things what kind of flexibility is in a time-based program and a flexibility in a CBD-based program. And they've done a principles document where if you can do an EPA in a non-traditional rotation, if you can meet the objectives, the big lesson there is flexibility is important, one, but number two is they have to actually meet, you have to actually still graduate residents that are ready to practice independently. And then thirdly is documentation, documentation, documentation. So we're going to make a decision about that this EPA is going to be done on a non-traditional rotation, and competence committees are making decisions based on less than optimal information. The documentation must be there, that this is why the decision has been made. So I think those are probably the three big things, but it does provide a really nice roadmap and a principles document. It's not prescriptive. It just gives helpful ideas of how people can manage during COVID, both for time-based programs and for CBME, CBD programs. That's it. I'll send that around afterwards.
So just to add a little bit about our local preparedness and moving forward with those programs that we'll be launching, and working with programs that are already in transition and feeling effects of COVID. We did send out a guidelines for assessment of learners in PGME document April 6th. It's uploaded to the CBME site and the PGME site. That's there for you. We've also sent out for circulation an academic development rotation with junior and senior medical resident ITers, as well as a virtual medicine rotation with ITers as well. So if you had questions about those, you can contact the office, but they're posted as well. And so we'll move on. Oh, just one other thing in terms of our readiness around MedSIS. There was a very strong feeling with the programs that were scheduled to transition of readiness locally. There's a lot of work that was done. So we do want to continue to support and work forward so that we don't lose momentum. And we will continue to keep in close touch. MedSIS, you'll hear more from Chantel later, but we have done a phenomenal job of keeping all of that on track, and actually have a good benefit of having our own system to be able to do that. And work at our pace. So the programs have been uploaded, built into MedSIS, and training will proceed through May and June as originally planned. So our next update, unless we wanted to field questions or have any more discussion around the impact of COVID or anything for Perveen. You can raise your hand, just ask out loud, or record one in chat. Okay, I just wanted to mention as well that we had a panel. We have Dr. Whitehead and Dr. Reed, who were both PDs in CBD programs. So they're able to field questions too, if you have any. And we thank them for joining us. So let's move on then. If we don't have questions about the impact of COVID and people feel okay, let's move on to our updates on faculty development. We have things happening there too. Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. It's Irini. So in terms of an update on what's happening with faculty development around CBME, we're definitely moving ahead. We did have a workshop or a full day retreat that was canceled. It was in April, and now we've moved it to the fall, likely as a virtual platform and potentially into distinct sessions. The one that's coming up close to now is the Academic Coach Workshop, and that's on May the 27th. It is on Zoom as a platform for a half day from 9 a.m. until 12. We've had a lot of success in terms of about 60 people have signed up till now, and a good mix of academic coaches and program directors. That remains open for anybody who's interested in registering or encouraging their faculty to register as well. The things that we're working towards is really taking a look and realigning our strategic plan and our curriculum mapping, as one could say, for faculty development in light of the recent occurrences and changes with COVID-19. We're looking at changing platforms, at making things obviously virtually as much as possible with retaining engagement in participants. We're also looking at mapping out essentially a timeline of readiness to launch into CBD potentially a year out from CBD to 6 months out from CBD to 3 months right before launch, and then right after launch in a bit of a timeline or a map, and having all the resources that a program director or CBD lead in the program would need in order to develop their faculty on the ground. Those material we're hoping that will be available quite shortly in terms of being able to direct people to already existing material by the CBME office, by postgrad, by the Royal College or other universities and collaborators, as well as being able to provide material that each program can modify and make their own in their local context. So those are the things that we're working on from the faculty development perspective for CBME. And later on in the agenda, Lisa is going to be eliciting some feedback on what other needs on the ground the faculty feel they need our support from as we move forward in planning the offerings of the program.
Anyone can use the chat function if you just wanted to list any ideas for CBME faculty development. We can capture it from there.
And that's right. Cynthia just chimed in and said that Robin Mackin, one of our senior pediatric residents, is presenting at Grand Rounds about the role of the academic coach. It coincides nicely in and around the time of the academic coaching workshop. So will likely serve as a really nice introduction and whet people's appetites. I will ask Cynthia perhaps to send us the date and the details, or if Robin is on the call as well, to send us that information. And I'm sure we can disseminate widely.
That's excellent. Great timing. Just a little plug about the retreat as well. The curriculum's been developed. It was a full day. We are going to move it into a series of webinars. It's case-based. The theme was good data in, good data out, with some exploration of how to use the MedSIS enhancements and the system to capture good data in a way that really presents comprehensive data for decision making. And part of that is competency committee mock case to walk through some of the factors that affect decision making by the group. That'll probably be September, October. Some of the feedback from those programs transitioning in July was that later in the fall, like September, October, would be helpful for them, having been 3 years or 3 months into their transition. Comment, just stop here for one sec. The OTL platform has been really useful for observing trainee recently without being too obtrusive. So the use of OTN has been helpful for virtual medical care. And we did add to the guidelines that it is the recommended platform in terms of privacy and security, as well as teleconference. Did you want to add something, Parveen? Sorry, I thought you were looking to speak.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm just, yeah, no, I don't. I think there's been issues with getting access to OTN. I'm not really up to date on that. So if anybody, for residents, if anybody has any comments, please feel free, but it's really for patient care and it's the protected password. So protected site that's for the hospital's perspective. So I don't know if anybody has any comments about their own experience because I'm not up to date on that.
So can I jump in, Lisa? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to reiterate what Ray had said, and it seems like there's a number of comments about it. Whatever platform you're using for virtual patient care, there certainly is an opportunity to allow for observation of history taking and potentially counseling during those assessments. Most of the tools have the capacity for the supervisor to mute and have video privacy while the resident is taking the history. So I think that in this virtual world right now, it actually is a very good tool that can be used to encourage observed assessment. And with regards to what Parveen was saying about the challenges or the issues that came up initially about residents and medical students getting access to OTN numbers for themselves. My understanding is that the OTN has now opened that up and allowed them to do that. I think it's less of an issue in that I think that most of the programs are actually setting up the appointments with the supervisor and then sending guest links out to the residents so that they can participate, and you don't need to have a membership or any sort of log on to get to those. It would only really be if you're running things in parallel where you need two separate pathways to have a learner doing something on their own under their own password and login, and then the faculty doing it in parallel. That's my understanding.
Just to add in, there were previously some concerns about residents and fellows not being able to get access to OTN and having to use zeros instead of billing numbers that they don't have. That has been sorted out from the OTN's perspective, and now residents for sure, and even medical students, can be granted easy access into OTN, and there's no billing implications, because that was another question that was brought up by different departments and divisions. The resident would essentially under supervision of the staff physician, and the staff physician would bill appropriately, like for a regular non-virtual visit.
Hi, it's Joanne. I had actually written to OTN to see if medical students could get an OTN access, hoping that maybe, because I know it can take a number of weeks to get our incoming residents set up before they arrive. So you're saying that medical students can also get access the same way a resident can for OTN?
So actually, I just see a chat from Blake, and he sent some information about how residents can access or get their One ID, and it's a separate mechanism for medical students. And I think if you look at the chat, Blake sent a link.
And that's the one for medical students, not residents?
Residents, it says. Residents should be able to obtain One IDs through their
Okay, sorry. My question was specifically about medical students. Our residents are set up. Just hoping to get the incoming students set up before they arrive.
I'm just going to jump in for 2 seconds. There is a separate spot for medical students. They have a separate form now for medical students because they don't have access to One ID. But they have a streamlined process where you're supposed to be able to submit a form for them to get a OTN login.
Okay, thank you.
There's information in the link I sent.
Thanks.
That's great. Okay, any other questions before we move on? Irene, did you have anything more? Shall we move on to learner development?
No, all good from my end.
Okay, great. Dave.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you to all of you guys who have come to this video conference. So I'm the current chair of the Learner Development Committee for CBME. So I'll be succinct in terms of summarizing the committee. Its intent is to really train our learners about functioning in a CBME CBD world, and it is really focused on learner development and understanding what their needs are. So what we've done is we've actually broken the committee into 3 subcommittees that are targeting different levels of learners. So each of them have their own individual needs. So there's the learners who are medical students now coming into a CBME program or a non-CBME program. We're really targeting the ones that are coming into the CBME programs and teaching them about what are all these terms and how can I thrive in this environment, and how can I take feedback effectively. And so Vicky Brakey is the faculty who is leading that group of residents, and hopefully we will be sending out to all the program directors some links that they can share with their incoming resident, or we may end up sending it out to your incoming residents by themselves to their email addresses about hey, here are some things about CBME. Here are some residents that you can talk to if you have questions about it. So that incoming cohort. There's also the residents who are in the programs that are just switching to CBME. So these are the ones who are really going to be acting more like faculty. They're going to be supervisors. And so they need to know about the supervisor role. How do I give feedback in a meaningful way? How do I use these tools? And so we have a committee led by Lisa Van Hooligan. I can't say her name. My apologies. But she is leading this committee, focusing on those residents who need to become essentially CBME supervisors. And then we have a third committee, which is really focusing on those residents who are already in, so the programs that have already gone to CBME, and looking at the residents who are getting the assessments and giving the assessments and getting tips from them, maybe sending them out some information about, again, feedback, and answering any questions that they might have as well. And so that's our goal. We also have separate a committee that is a resident only committee. And this is really kind of our on the ground feedback from residents from both CBME programs and non-CBME programs. And those, so there really should be representation from all the different programs across McMaster. And it's currently being led or co-led by David Sands and by Spencer Van Mill. And they're going to be meeting regularly and feeding back information to the various CBME committees, both the learner committee as well as the faculty development committee. So that's all I have to say. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dave. You've done a tremendous amount of work there. And it's really helping us address our goal of increasing resident participation and presence. And that's possible now through this organization plus a resident lead group. So we're looking to have 3 to 4 residents attached to each of the CBME committees. And we've been busy with reviewing the terms of reference and membership of each of those committees to broaden it for representation for programs that are already launched, just about to launch, and a little further out. And we've been doing a lot of work with the PA committee, acknowledging their significant role in all of that. So we've really been looking at increasing synergies and cross-representation across the committee so that we can really build the network and move things forward. Any questions before we move on to MedSIS? Okay, so lots of work has been done. Chantel Campbell will share more. She's just been fantastic in being very accessible to programs and connecting directly with those that are ready to launch. I just wanted to make one comment about the 2021 cohort. Now that we're starting to hear about things shifting forward, there are activities that typically happen through the CBME office and readying those programs. And some of those things will maintain on fall, even though we move it to a web delivery system that will be around your curriculum mapping and the CBD model and where we're at. And we'll use some tools that we've developed, like the transition plan, to help make sure your preparation goes and flows as it should. So Chantel, if you wanna take us through MedSIS and all the enhancements. Good stuff going on there.
Thanks, Lisa. So yes, my name is Chantel, and I am one of the analysts that works with MedSIS, and my role is to help folks onboard their programs to the MedSIS platform and then provide the ongoing support moving forward, and then keeping note of any enhancements and getting those put into the system as we move along. Just an update in terms of where we're at with programs. The only program I haven't touched base with is plastic surgery, if anyone from there is on the line right now. And that's only because it was the last set of EPAs that I received from Royal College. They're being worked on right now, hopefully finished early next week. And then we can meet up and go over some program specific stuff. But all of the other programs I've had a chance to reach out to. In terms of training, I think Allison sent out an email just prior to this about kind of how the format of training would go. So last year, we actually had the opportunity to have folks come to our computer lab on McMaster campus and have some hands-on training. We had coaches and PDs and PAs, and everybody could kind of log in and we could go through the module step by step. We don't have that available to us now just because of everything going on with COVID. So our game plan is to have a video that I will record of the dashboard, just going through the module and various components of it, how to look at a learner summary report, that sort of thing. And we'll get that out as soon as we can. It will be out in this month, and we'll forward the link to that video. And then the idea is that folks will, folks that are starting to trigger in trial forms and that sort of thing will have an opportunity to view the dashboard, go in and look around a little bit and do a little bit of on your own time learning. And then we'll hold an open Zoom session in June. And I think 2 dates went out for that. And so, you know, we can do a high level review, but I really wanted to give folks the opportunity to bring any questions that they have that might be specific, you know, about their program or their role or things that they're trying to look at. And then we can have some open discussion about that. Since everything is so staggered, some programs might start trialing and getting forms completed sooner than others. I think we'll likely probably have to have another open Zoom session or something similar later on in the year, potentially in like September, to ensure that everybody's actually had a chance to go in and look at data and get their wheels turning and have questions and things like that. I don't have my chat open, but just in case, I will take a look in case anything comes up. Okay, in terms of enhancements, I'm going to share my screen, and I think that this was sent out by PGME office by Allison. This is our plan for the next wave of CBME specific developments. And so basically of all of the enhancements that we receive, so anytime I meet with a program or Lisa meets with a program or folks email us and they have suggestions about potential enhancements or things that would be useful in the system, we always make note of those things. And at our bi-weekly meetings and CBME implementation meeting, we try and prioritize these items based on, you know, the impact, the number of people it's impacting, you know, if it's impacting getting in good data, those types of things. And we go through and we come up with a bulk list of items that we hope to have developed within the next 3 to 4 months. So this is our next list that we would like to be developed. The idea is that everything on here will be in MedSIS by August. And some of these things have a date that is earlier than that. I won't go over everything in detail, but just to kind of explain what a few of them are. The first one is a new information button, and anybody who's been triggering forms using the CBME mobile, MedSIS mobile will might know what I'm referring to. But right now when you go to trigger an EPA, it's a very short name title of the EPA. Because a lot of EPAs have very long titles and they have key features attached to them, but what actually shows up on the mobile is a very short title. We want to implement a little hover or an info button or something that you can click on that's going to bring up more details about the EPA, so you have a better sense of what the EPA is about prior to triggering the form. And so this is for a little bit of convenience to kind of help the resident when they're triggering the form, and when faculty get the form, that they really know what they're completing the form on and what the EPA is really about when they're filling out the form. Multi-source feedback. So for folks that are using the platform already, there's a multi-source feedback form in MedSIS, and it's linked to your EPAs, and the forms can be triggered and they can be collected, but they are not anonymous and they're not collated in any way, and there's no functionality behind it to kind of bring things together. And so we'll be working on coming up with a way that, if an EPA says it has to have 3 different observations, that 3 folks can fill those out. It will collate these things, anonymize things, and be able to kind of spit out some type of report to the resident and to the program about their multi-source feedback. But we still have to do some information gathering and development on how that's going to function. The next 2 things I really won't get into. It's basically added functionality for the dashboard to be able to track more advanced requirements. So some of the EPAs have very basic requirements: collect 3 observations of achievement, 3 have to be in an outpatient setting, but then there are some requirements that are quite complex, like it's an elderly patient in an outpatient setting for this particular procedure, and the system right now has more basic functionality that doesn't allow us to track those things, and they're currently manually being tracked by the program. So once we implement this, I will go in, update all of these kind of complex requirements so that they're no longer manual, and the system will do the legwork to calculate when the resident has met that requirement. We're also adding some more filters to our other assessments tab. So in the CBME module, there is a tab on an individual learner basis, and it's called other assessments. And this is pulling in all of their ITERs, WBAs, procedures, if you're using the procedure activity log. And we want to add a little bit of functionality that allows you to filter that data. So one of them is that folks are looking to say, just show me all of the non-CBME forms that have been completed in the last 3 months, because right now it's just like a cumulative kind of data dump of all the forms, and you got to look at what rotations and when they were completed and open them up that way. And so we just wanted to simplify it for folks that are viewing this data to be able to move the data around and view what they want to view. The other component of that is that we recently implemented expired forms. And so folks that are already CBD have said, well, if I look at my learner's dashboard and I can see that they're lacking in some areas, I need to know if that is because the resident is not triggering those forms and not trying to get that stuff completed. Or is it that the resident really is trying and they're triggering those forms, but they're having a tough time getting faculty completing them and they're expiring, and therefore the resident's not getting those assessments completed. So we want to pull in the status of all of the forms so you can see when something is pending, it's completed, it's been expired. So you'll get a good sense of all the forms that have been triggered for that resident, kind of where the onus lies. The resident is really trying, but they're having a tough time because folks aren't completing the forms, or we need to follow up with this resident and let them know they really need to put a little more effort into getting these assessments completed. Another big one is the passive or one-step submission on the CBME forms. And so anybody currently using the MedSIS mobile will know that when a resident triggers a form to a supervisor, the form opens up and the resident can kind of fill out some of those contextual variable or encounter details. And then they have to email that form to the supervisor. So there's a button that says send to evaluator and goes to the supervisor. And we're basically taking that step out so that the resident can just pass over their device to the supervisor and it can all be submitted in one step. And we'll basically have, for security purposes, we'll have an email once a form is submitted. A follow-up email will go to the supervisor just as an FYI to say an assessment form has been completed out under your name. You know, the form is attached. If it was not you that completed this form, please contact, you know, whoever we decide is going to have to get those emails. And then there is the learner summary report. And one of the biggest asks that we have for that is to be able to pull the learner summary report by date range. So for anyone who doesn't know what the learner summary report is, there's a button in MedSIS that allows you to pull in on an individual learner basis all of their data that is in MedSIS. So an aggregate of ITERs, aggregate of all of their CBME forms, WBAs, and pulls in their attendance at academic sessions, that sort of thing. The issue is that it's cumulative. And so again, it's folks just want to see, show me what's been completed in the last 3 months. I don't want to have to dig through all of this data to find out what's been completed when. And so that's something that we're working on as well. There are other enhancements to the learner summary report where, again, we're just trying to build more flexibility in how you see the data. Some folks want to see an aggregate version. Some folks want to see collated version. So we're hoping to, you know, keep layering on top of those functionalities to make the report really diverse and flexible in terms of the data that you're viewing. And then last, which I don't have on here, it's not an enhancement, but it's part of a new module. And so we're developing the family medicine CBME module for them. They are actually going to be going live with it soon in the next week or so. And a piece of the puzzle that we're working on for them was what we're referring to as a competence committee dashboard. And so we kind of took a step back to look at that dashboard and think about how could this be useful for Royal College programs as well. And so we developed a working group, and I think Lisa and Allison sent out emails to some folks and tried to gather a group, and we basically had 2 meetings scheduled. One was last week, one I think is happening again this week. We had a draft of what we envisioned based on what family medicine told us that they would need. And then we met with this group and we got some feedback, and then we'll meet again and get some more feedback. And then we will be developing that hopefully by August as well, is our timeline. And anytime new functionality comes out or enhancements come out, emails will come out from either MedSIS or PG office, and we'll have documentation updated and that sort of things to help you understand how that new functionality works. In terms of this dashboard, it's basically a dashboard that has all documentation and components of your trainees' competence committee review meetings, all housed in one place by review. So you can easily see everything that went into each review for that learner. And again, we're making it very flexible. Each program can, you know, configure their own reviews and have their own, you know, pieces of the puzzle that have to go in their review. And so we'll be sharing that once we kind of nail down some of the details on that. We will share that with this group as well, so that you know exactly what's coming. And I think that's it for enhancements. I'm just going to go over to the chat to see if there's anything.
Yeah, we can resend the table of the enhancements out. I think Lori had requested. No, that's no problem to do that.
Okay. I have one question in here. Can I comment on mark as approved versus mark as achieved? Okay, so folks who haven't launched yet might not be as familiar with this, but for folks who are already using the CBME module, each EPA has a status. And so it starts off as pending, and once forms start getting completed, it goes to in progress. Once the resident has completed the requirements for that EPA, the status will turn to ready to review. And it's just a little like indicator for the competence committee to know, okay, this resident has completed everything for this EPA. Then the EPA, once the competence committee meets and makes a decision that this EPA is achieved, then somebody manually has to go in and mark that EPA achieved. So either the program admin, program director, competence committee chair, or someone on the committee who's assigned to do that would mark it achieved. Those decisions then have to get ratified at your RPC, And once your RPC approves those decisions, the EPA and MedSIS then has to be updated and marked as approved, again, by either PD, PA, Competence Committee Chair, to do that. It's like a two-step approval, goes to achieved and goes to approved. Okay, enhancements will be sent out. Enhancement features of action will make review process easier. Perfect, fantastic. Hover feature to see more details. The status of the triggered EPAs, including expired and ones that feature especially. Okay, perfect. Okay, I think that's all the questions unless anybody else wants to chime in.
We can still take some and address them later for sure.
Yeah, and then again, like if it's anything specific to MedSIS, our email is medsis@mcmaster.ca, and anything that has to do with CBD will automatically get sent to me. So happy to answer emails offline as well.
That's great. So that's the process of how these enhancements come about, right from the programs that are using it. And so we do regular reviews of questions or issues that come up and prioritize those enhancements. And there's committees that do that and vet that through. So please share anything. And we'll take a look at, once the enhancements are in place, we'll be able to showcase them in the retreat in the fall, and then get some user feedback. A couple other things that happen with MedSIS, we'll be adding a procedural form and a procedure log. That's going to go into the broader MedSIS module, not just within the CBME, but those are forthcoming in the fall too. And we made a change to the O-score anchors, a slight adjustment more to the verbiage. And that was vetted through the CBME implementation and executive committee. Those changes have already been made on the O scale inside MedSIS. You probably already noticed that, but worth mentioning. Any questions coming up in chat? Just a couple other things to share that are coming down the pipe, as well as the RC will be sharing virtual teaching and learning resources. Those will be forwarded and uploaded to the CBME site. And the PGME site, if more broad, which I think they would be, we're going to be actually revamping the CBME site and porting the content into a slightly different format to aid in user experience and wayfinding, getting you right to what you're looking for by group and your role. So that's going to be happening over the next couple months. And we're going to be linking where we can to some of the resources through the Faculty of Health Sciences group on virtual teaching that they have, so we can optimize what we already have at our disposal. And some mention of the technical guides. They went out in the CBME newsletter and went out in draft to some for review. Thank you for looking at them. So the first 4 of 8 have been reviewed and are about to be launched. So they're 2-page guidelines that are coming from the Royal College. They're detailed, they're quite helpful, and I think it'll be useful to everybody, especially those that are approaching launch. And that, I think, is where we can pause. If there's questions or anything that anybody wants to discuss, please chime in. Okay, so everything, the session was recorded today. If it worked out well, we're going to share the link. We'll capture the details. Oh, Dave, sure.
Sorry, I put it on the text link, but I'm just wondering, while we have them online, it would just be maybe great to hear from some programs that have actually been running it, and just a quick synopsis of maybe what are the highlight best things about it and highlight the most challenging things about it. I don't know if people are wanting to hear that, but I would be interested.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, similarly from my end, if people were wanting to just also parallel that with what faculty development needs that they feel on the ground are lacking, that we could work on kind of imminently and urgently as a Fac Dev committee for those programs who are either still set to launch in July or those who have been deferred, really anybody, that would be very helpful in terms of aligning things with our strategic plan.
Thanks, Rainey. So Lori, Joanne, anybody want to contribute from their experience, tips for those about to launch, addressing COVID challenges?
It's Lori here. Probably the most important thing is getting the residents engaged, and we found that they were sort of the driving force between CBME and reality. So that was really helpful with our own resident development committee. From the faculty development end, we found a bit of a challenge, but quickly honed into the idea that smaller groups of faculty with a facilitator work better than large groups. So at the individual 3 hospital sites, we would have someone who would go and facilitate a meeting at lunch, like a lunch and learn, where the faculty who could show up. And of course, they can't all show up the same day, so they had to repeat it every couple of months. And we took attendance as well, so that we made sure that every faculty member who was attending on the CTU eventually got 3 separate sessions. So that was quite a challenge, but we found that we had to do that in order to capture everyone. Now in smaller programs, it won't be that difficult, but I would suggest that if your faculty are sort of a bit shaky about what's happening, bring in somebody who's a good facilitator who's gone through it, and have them sit down with them and answer their questions, and have them there if you know, with their cell phones, and just go through a few sessions. Just some familiarity with the whole process improves so much. That was another thing. I guess the other big issue that I'd like to say, and it looks like Chantal and the committee has addressed this by having the one-step authentication, and the one-step EPA is going to be a huge difference, I think. So we're really pleased that that's going through. So that was quite a barrier because of the short, the time expiration date. A lot of faculty not responding to the emails, or the emails somehow don't get there, or they're too busy to fill it out or whatever. But to have it all done on the spot, the EPA completion is going to be a major thing.
Yeah, I can. Oh, sorry, somebody else there. I was going to say, I can echo Lori's comments about that hover tool, and the one step will make a huge difference for the same reason. We've also had problems with learner engagement. And we are a very small program, so everyone is kind of constantly encouraging, and it is improving. But I have kind of created these lists and QR codes all over the clinic areas, around the ward areas, so that people can just flash their phone and go right into an EPA, both the residents and the staff, to trigger them. So that's helped somewhat as well. The other thing that we were finding and discussed at our last competency committee meeting is that there's it feels like there's, in a small program, a lot of redundancy between the academic coach role and the program director role. And we are just all changing hats and coaching and being program director and ratifying, and we're basically, there's a lot of repetition there. So we were going to have some discussions about how better to clarify the roles of the coach and distinguish them from the roles of the program director, so that there isn't that much redundancy, particularly in small programs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Reed from otolaryngology. So we've been in CBD for quite a while now, since 2017. I was program director for a while at the beginning of the launch, but not anymore. One of the things that I felt that was really important is, so we know that our residents, they drive a lot, the CBD. I mean, they're the ones that are going to be driving the EPAs. So at the beginning, the first few months of their, when they start, I think it's very important that they have a really good orientation on, what CBD is, how does it work, the importance, of, triggering those observations. So if the resident knows exactly what they need to do, and we know they're going to be really keen and on board, that's very, very important. In terms of, we are a surgical program, so in terms of faculty giving direct feedback, we've been doing direct feedback for a long, long time, on surgeries, because we're right there observing them directly. The thing that I found that it was a little bit more challenging for surgical program was to get the EPAs done and, achieve within the clinical setting. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, not every program are using, academic advisors or coaches. We did from the get-go, we had academic coaches, or some of them call them advisors. And I find that it's very useful, mostly on making sure that, residents are working around their EPAs. I think it was Mary who had just mentioned that, defining the role of the PD versus the academic coach. So having that coach work more maybe on getting those EPAs accomplished could be one of their important roles. And the other thing that I find that was very helpful having a coach is if you have a resident that's actually struggling, or a resident who is in either an enhanced education plan or remediation, that coach can be, right there, almost checking on a weekly basis how that resident is doing, which, is very helpful on reducing the role of the program director having to do that. So I think those are mainly what summarizes our experience. And of course, just like even on the normal traditional programs, you're going to see some faculty that are more on board than others. That's pretty much the same that you'll see with the CBD.
Terrific. Thanks, Diane. Thought of one other thing that has come up on discussions at the Leads with the College was they're very open to receiving feedback about from PDs or others about any misalignment between your EPA and your entrustment scale, or if there are contextual variables that you feel are redundant or problematic in any way. It's come up a number of times, so they're actually looking for feedback. So if you are having any experience around any number of EPAs or contextual variables, to share that forward with your specialty chair. They're looking at that now. Okay, I don't see any other questions here, and it's just going on 1 o'clock. We're right on time. So we've recorded the session, we'll send it out, and the highlights of today's session will go out in an e-newsletter. I've been delaying it because we wanted the final decision from the college around those programs that are transitioning. So we'll put all of that in, links to the resources we commented about, and provide that update soon. So thanks for joining everybody today, and have a great rest of your afternoon.